everyone, Nora the Leca Queen here. Today I'm bringing you into a story of plant struggle and success. My African violets were battling the long neck or the dreaded gooseneck, a common problem where they stretch too much, lose the bottom leaves, leading to bending and weakening of their stems. But I wasn't about to let this issue defeat my plants. With some research and a lot of care, I started the process of bringing them back to health. Now, I'm thrilled to share with you their amazing transformation from weak and stretched to strong and flourishing. It's a real success story of how I rescued my African violets from a long neck disaster. I've got my plant here. I'm going to take it out of that pot. It is a very, very root bound. Oh, there we go. You can see that. Those are the very fine roots of the African violet there, and you've already got those old leaves already falling off. So what I'm going to do at this stage actually is just take off a lot of those old roots. I did have an incident with my African violet. Not too sure what I did actually. You can see those leaves there are discolored. So I'm going to just take those all off. And the reason we're doing that is those leaves are old anyway. Nothing is going to happen. We want the plant to focus its energies on growing lovely new roots and lovely new leaves. That's what my plant now looks like. I am not going to do anything with that root ball. I will leave it exactly the way it is. So I've got my blade here. It's sterilized, and I'm just going to peel off those scaly bits like that, just to allow the fresh stem to shine through. See, that looks really nice and fresh, and you've got that green of that stem. So I'm actually going to repot this. So I had a smaller 10 centimeter pot. Now I've got a 14 centimeter pot. I put some Leca in my 14 centimeter pot, and I want to make sure that my stem gets completely buried in there. So that's what I want, and my plant is going to be right at the top, which is exactly what I need. So I've put the right amount of Leca. I'm just going to fill that up with more Leca. As you can see, the stem is no longer visible and it's well buried in there. So whether you're using soil or Leca or pond, the same would apply. You just get a bigger pot, put your plant in the bigger pot, fill that up with soil, and you have your plant like this. And your plant is now going to be able to rejuvenate itself, and it will look so much better than it was when it was stalked. This is the plant that I kept the stem. Look at how glorious that plant is looking now. These are all new leaves that have come up since I potted that plant. You can see what the old leaves look like there. They were teeny, tiny, and they were all sort of bunched together. But look at that fantastic new growth. It is just absolutely marvelous. I love how, oh, hang on. I think it's about to flower. It's actually about to flower for me. This plant is so happy a few months after drastically, taking off quite a number of the leaves, scaling back the stem. It's got these fantastic new leaves and is about to flower. It's doing so well, but I want to show you what those roots are doing. You can see those roots are just prolific. There's just roots everywhere. This is the reservoir in which that plant lives, and it's just so happy. When an African violet is happy, those leaves are as vibrant as they can be. They look absolutely stunning. And then, of course, you get it to flower, and that's even more rewarding. I'm not even sure what color these flowers will be, but I'm just really excited to see that this plant is surviving and is really and truly thriving. This is my gooseneck African violet. You can see it's really bent over there. The plant is not happy at all. I'll take that out of the Leca. And that's what that looks like. Look at that. It looks really It's so bad. It's like it's completely at a 90-degree angle. Can you imagine? I'm going to grab my blade and cut the crown off my plant. So here we go. There we go. There we go. My plant now has no roots whatsoever. That's the bottom part of my plant. What I will do at this stage is just pull off again some of the old leaves because I don't want to have too many of those. I want the plants to really be thinking about making roots because at this stage it has no roots. So just get that off. And I want a long enough stem to be able to go in my pot. There we go. That's nice and straight, and that's going to be sitting up like that. You can see how the plant was just facing in the one direction. It's also really important to rotate your African violet plants as well, because unless they're getting the light from the top and they're just growing up, it's really difficult for it to maintain that symmetrical shape. It'll always face the direction of the sun. So two things were done badly here. I didn't control the neck and I did not rotate the plant. That's what will happen. So now that we've got our neck, we've got some of the scale bits there. I'm just going to peel those off so that I have my neck completely fresh.
Scales taken off, some leaves taken off. You know what? I still want to take off some more leaves, to be honest with you. I think I'll take that. I've now got my Clonix and I'm going to put my Clonix on my stalk. And because this is a rooting hormone, I'm hoping that that's actually going to accelerate the growth of the roots on my stalk, and hence my plant is going to be alive. So yeah, we'll see how that goes. You know, this plant has got no roots at the moment, so it's really going to be working towards making roots and just trying to sustain itself. As you may have guessed, this is the method I have never tried before. People try this in soil. People do this in soil and it works well. I'm thinking if it works well in soil, I don't see why it can't work in Leca. So there we go. That's what we're going to do. We're putting this decapitated baby straight back into Leca with no roots. Give that a second to dry off a little bit, and I'm literally putting it back in the same pot that it was in. A little bit of happening there. So I want enough that my plant is able to sit in there and plant neck to be buried. And that will be that. That works really, really well. And now to try and put the Leca in, that's actually the really hard part. Okay, that is my African violet decapitated, the neck descaled, covered in Clonix, and potted up in some Leca that was pre-soaking in my Clonix clone solution.
Here she is. This is the plant that I decapitated. I decapitated this plant, completely removed the root system as you saw earlier, and this is her now. She is marvelous. Look at those roots. New roots everywhere, but more importantly, look at those leaves. The leaves are absolutely fantastic. They are growing. There's so many of them. It's very refreshing to know that you can actually decapitate your African violet, put it in Leca clay balls, and it's still going to grow new roots and the plant is going to thrive. So it doesn't have to be just something that you do in soil. It can work just as well when you're doing it in Leca clay balls. This is as successful as you can get it. You can see how those leaves there are still quite tiny. That's the old plant. But this plant has been rejuvenated, and I don't see any evidence of flowering for this particular plant. But, you know, it had to rebuild a whole new root system, so I guess it spent all its energies doing that. But look at those roots. They are just absolutely fantastic. And honestly, this plant is loving life. So yeah, what would I recommend? Decapitation or just getting a longer plant? I think either or. They both work equally well. I mean, you could say that this plant, the one that I just buried, looks a lot better than this one does. But then, I still think it's because this one actually didn't have to start rebuilding a whole new root system, unlike this plant. So all in all, I think that kind of equals out, and they're probably on par in terms of growth. African violets are so easy to take care of when you're growing them in Leca clables. I want to show you this gorgeous baby over here. This plant is flowering for me. Look at that fantastic little white flower that's just opened up. There's another one about to open up over there. The plant is just loving life in Leca clables. Honestly, people just get so surprised about how hard they think it's really hard to take care of African violets. African violets are very easy to take care of when you're growing them in Leca clables. And that's because you've got that reservoir over there. So they've got access to water and nutrition whenever they want it. So your African violet is constantly feeding, has constantly got food. So those leaves are always just looking so pristine and so lush and so good. And if you use in your reservoir a nutrient that's made for flowering, like the one I use Flower Focus, that just brings out those little flowers, and it's just fantastic. I've got another African violet to show you here. So let me see if there's any evidence of flowering for this one. Not yet, but that's another one that I've got. This one is also just absolutely loving life in Leca clables, looking the business, looking absolutely fantastic. And I'll give you a little bit of a sneak peek. This is another African violet that I just recently transferred from soil to Leca. I did a video about that, and if you haven't seen it, just click on the link above and it'll take you straight to it. But there, the plant is alive and there's some new leaves on there. And look at how the size difference. Look at the old leaves and look at the new leaves. Those leaves are so much bigger than the older leaves, almost twice as big. So definitely this plant is obviously loving life in Leca clables. I just love my African violets, and they love living in Leca clables. If you want to find out how you can transfer your African violets from soil to Leca, watch this next video where I take you on a step-by-step journey of how to transfer your African violet from soil to Leca successfully. I'll see you there.